Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Fightful Boxing Podcast, November 2018. My name is Carlos Toro, lead boxing writer of Fightful.com, here to give you a quick rundown on everything going on in the world of boxing. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe. You're in the live chat. Welcome. And if anybody wants to leave a comment or a question for me that you want me to answer on the show, don't be afraid to do so. Now, we are in a very, very precarious period in boxing. Let's start with the big news that happened a couple of days ago, which was the news of PBC, Premier Boxing Champions, unveiling their 2019 schedule for Fox and Fox Sports 1. Had a big event over there in Los Angeles. PBC was kind enough to invite me over there to the event. Unfortunately, I was not able to make it because, it's kind of hard to go from Puerto Rico to Los Angeles on less than a week's notice. So I would have gone there if I could. Fortunately, could not. But again, I very much thank PBC for giving me the opportunity. Now, looking at this PBC schedule for 2019, now here they unveiled, I believe, a total of 22 fight cards. I'm not going to go through the list of every single one, every single day. You can find that on Fightful.com, FightfulMMA.com, FightfulBoxing.com. But here are the important days, the ones that we have actual fights scheduled for 2019. Starting in January 13, we have Jose Usyk versus Caleb Plant for the IBF Super Middleweight title. That's going to be on FS1. Good fight, really good fight. I'm excited to see what Usyk can do now that he is the full world champion. He did very well against Andre Durrell to win the interim title earlier this year. Caleb Plant, very curious how he's going to fight coming out of the hand injury, which delayed this fight. The fight was supposed to happen a while back, but probably about in August, late August, early September. But overall, can't complain about that fight. It's on FS1, so I think a lot of people on FS1 are going to be very, very happy with that card. That main event is going to be really, really fun. January 26, 2019, it's Keith Thurman, the return of the welterweight champion of the world. Keith Thurman, the WBA super title holder at 147 pounds. He will face off against Josecito Lopez at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. That's going to be on Fox. That's really a mismatch on paper, massive mismatch, if you ask me. But let's face it, Keith Thurman is almost 2 years removed from his last fight. He's undergone a number of injuries, such as mainly his elbow injury that he suffered in his last fight in March 2017 against Danny Garcia. So really not surprised that he's going to be taking an easy fight, so to speak. This is, more so just to shake off the ring rust before Keith Thurman can really get the big fights going for 2019. Can't really complain, but really not a matchup I'm too interested in. February 16 in Los Angeles on Fox, Leo Santa Cruz versus Miguel Flores for the WBA super version of the featherweight world title. That's probably the biggest mismatch on paper. Probably, in my opinion, that is the biggest disappointment out of all these cards, of all these fights announced. For months, Showtime and PBC, they have been teasing a potential unification fight between Leo Santa Cruz and Gary Russell Jr., who's the WBC champion. And the WBC actually went as far as making a diamond title for Leo Santa Cruz's last fight against Abner Maris. Santa Cruz won that fight, which gave the WBC technically the authority to order a fight between the two world champions. It never happened. I don't know why it didn't happen. They've been teasing it for a long time. It's very, very disappointing. Miguel Flores, I don't want to criticize him too harshly, but he really, I don't think he's earned a world title shot. He is at the bottom of the WBC rankings still, for those still eligible for a world title. He's ranked number 15 on BoxRec, the site that a lot of people go to for resources and see when fights are happening. They have their own ranking system. It's more of a mathematical formula, more so than an actual, eye test kind of rankings. But just to give you an idea, he is ranked, I believe, 136 on BoxRec. That's unacceptable. I don't know why that's a main event for a PBC card on Fox, but hey, it is what it is. So we shall see. I don't think that fight's going to be a very exciting one. I don't think that fight's going to be a very competitive one. I think Santa Cruz is going to win that one fairly easily. February 23rd is Anthony Durrell versus Avni Yildirim for the vacant WBC super middleweight title. That's going to be on FS1. That, for those who are curious, who are not unaware, thinking, wait, why is the WBC super middleweight title vacant? Isn't David Benavidez the current champion? He was, but he a few weeks back he tested positive for the I'm gonna butcher the name. I'm gonna butcher the name, so I'm just gonna say he tested positive for cocaine. It's for the main compound found in cocaine, and so the WBC moved him from world champion to something that's called champion in Rizin, which means he's technically not the world champion, but he's not the world champion. It's a very, very strange label to give instead of just outright stripping him of the belt or just asking him to vacate it. In other words, Benavidez will get a shot at the title, I would assume, in 2019, maybe in the summer or in the fall. But in the meantime, they did create the title is actually vacant. So this is where we get with Anthony Durrell and Avni Yildirim. March 9, Sean Porter versus Yordenis Ugas for the WBC welterweight title. That's going to be on Fox in Las Vegas at the T-Mobile Arena. It's a good fight. It's not terrible. It's not the worst welterweight title fight on this list. I mean, Yordenis Ugas has been riding a massive wave of momentum since suffering 2 losses, I believe, in 2014. He has been on a roll. He's won big television fights time and time again. He's been in some exciting fights, especially the one against Ray Robinson back earlier this year. His last fight against Cesar Barrio Nuevo, not really exciting. Bit of a snooze fest if you ask a lot of people, although Ugas dominated that fight. He became the mandatory challenger, so this is where we stand. March 16, Errol Spence Jr. versus Mikey Garcia for the IBF welterweight title. This is the big one. This is the one that people from PBC have been eagerly waiting for all year long. Mikey Garcia, even before his last fight against Robert Easter Jr., he's been saying he wants to fight Errol Spence Jr. He wants to win a world title at a 5th weight class. The fight's finally happening. It's going to be on a pay-per-view. It's not going to be on Fox. It's not going to be on FS1, but it's going to be a pay-per-view distributed by Fox. So you're going to get the Fox broadcasters there. You're not going to get any of the Showtime people. I would assume Fox, they have their own broadcast team. So you're not going to see Mauro Ranallo. You're not going to see Paulie Malignaggi nor Al Bernstein, I would imagine. You're not going to see any of those guys on these Fox cards or on the FS1 cards. So that's a big fight. I love this fight. A lot of people are already writing off Mikey Garcia due to his very, very small stature compared to the physically gifted Errol Spence Jr. And, it's hard not to think of this as a mismatch on paper based just on the size factor. In terms of skills, this is a match made in heaven. I love this fight. A lot of people really, really like this fight, but it's going to be tough. I'm certainly going to be paying attention. This is definitely the biggest fight by far on the fights that were announced at this point. March 24 at going to be on FS1, Lamont Peterson versus Sergey Lipinets. It's a good crossroads fight between two boxers at 140, 147 pounds. I don't think they mention what weight class that fight will take place as. Sergey Lipinets primarily a 140-pound fighter. Lamont Peterson was just fighting at 147. We don't know what the weight class, I believe. So, but still, that's going to be a fun fight. Peterson is kind of getting up there in years. He's coming off of the loss against Errol Spence Jr. back in January. Sergey Lipinets, still a very, very good 140-pound fighter. He could do really well at 147, if you ask me. So that's going to be a fun fight. It'll be exciting. It'll be tough. It'll be gritty. It'll be physical. I'm on board with it. Then you have April 13, Caleb Truitt versus Peter Quillen. Crossroads fights, another one, this time at 168 pounds. Peter Quillen looked good in his super middleweight debuted earlier this year, but, you know, again, these are just these FS1 cards, aside from the world title fights, they're fun crossroads fights, nothing too big, nothing too extravagant. Not that these are not world title eliminators, but they will be fun scraps. They will be fun fights to watch on FS1. And then lastly, April 20 on Fox, Danny Garcia versus Adrian Granados. Garcia is coming off of the loss to Sean Porter for the WBC title back in September. Granados, he's been alternating wins to losses here and there. He's a extremely tough out, especially if you ask guys like Sean Porter and Adrian Broner. Adrian Granados is a fun fighter. I love this fight. This is going to be exciting. I think this is going to be one of the better fights of the first 4 months for PBC. I mean, Granados, he's a guy that if you decide to fight up close, he's going to be willing to trade blows. Danny Garcia, very, very skillful. I bet you he's going to be extremely hungry to get back in the world title picture. He thinks that he's won the fight against Sean Porter. It's debatable. It was an extremely close fight. A lot of people would even say both fighters won 6 rounds apiece. So really, Danny Garcia still have a chip in his shoulder. Let's see how that fight goes. I think, it's going to be a good fight. Those are the fights that were announced. Overall, final thoughts collectively. It's not a great lineup. It's outside of Mikey Garcia versus Errol Spence Jr., which we had already known for a good while. But let's be honest, when you have the welterweight division basically at your fingertips and you don't make the unification fights, people are going to complain. And, whether or not the reasons for making these mismatches on paper with the Keith Thurmans of the world, with the Sean Portis of the world, whether or not you think those mismatches are justifiable for these first few months, that's debatable. I understand why Fox and PBC would make these fights like that. Keith Thurman, again, hasn't fought in nearly 2 years. It'd be very unfair to expect him to go out and fight a Sean Porter or an Errol Spence Jr. Sean Porter, he's been saying for weeks, he's going to have to take care of his mandatory. He wants to fight Errol Spence Jr. He thinks that's the fight to make, but he needs to take care of the mandatories. I don't think the WBC was in any hurry to enforce any mandatory fights for Sean Porter if a fight against Errol Spence Jr. could be made. But Errol Spence Jr., he wants to fight Mikey Garcia. So you have those 3 welterweight champions all kind of on different pages. So really, while we didn't get the big fights, what we still got is still kind of disappointing, if you ask me. So I don't know. I'm going to be, it's going to be interesting. The FS1 cards are actually, in a way, far more interesting than the Fox cards. Collectively, I love the Caleb Plant Jose Uzcategui fight. I love the Yevgeny Yildirim versus Andre Durrell fight. I love those fights. These are and they're not mismatches on paper. That's the important thing. And my mistake, Anthony Durrell, not Andre Durrell. My mistake. But again, I love those fights. Those are even kind of difficult to predict fights. So I actually like the FS1 cards more than the Fox cards if we were to compare, how good, like if we were to compare Fox's competitive fights versus FS1 competitive fights, FS1's going to win. They have the better fights. They don't have the stars, but they have the better fights. So that's really going to... That's actually going to be a very interesting experiment to see what draws more, what people are going to be paying attention more, the bigger stars, despite being in mismatches, or the better fights. Collectively, I think people are going to tune in for the bigger stars. And with Fox, I think in a way it'll introduce a mass audience to these world champions, to Leo Santa Cruz, to Keith Thurman, to Sean Porter, Errol Spence, to all these guys. So that when you make the big fights at the end of the year or next year, or 2020, I should say, then the audience are already familiar with these guys and they're going to be absolutely loving what these guys bring to the table. So overall, I'm not a huge fan of the PBC lineup that we have thus far, but the first 4 months are not going to define what the rest of the year is going to be like. They're not going to define what 2020 is going to be like. They're not going to define what 2021 is going to be like. So, and one thing I want to, and I want to end the PBC thing on this note. If you actually look at the schedule, a lot of these fight cards are starting at 8 p.m. Eastern. That is so good of Fox to do and not put these fights at 10 p.m., at 11 p.m., or in the case of ESPN tomorrow with the Maurice Hooker versus Alex Aceto fight at midnight Eastern. You're getting a good audience at a great time. 8 p.m. Eastern is perfect. Even when you have a 2.5 hour undercard, you're still gonna have the main event at 10:30. That's perfect. I wish all boxing card or all big boxing cards in the US were like that. Have the fight cards start at 8 p.m. and have the main event at 10:30. And we'll wrap things up at 11:30. I think that's perfect. I love it. And listen, especially for the media, I can tell you this: media are gonna love it. Yep, I can tell you how many times I've missed trains in New York to go home or missed transportation to go home and to spend the night in New York just because the fight card started really late and ended really late. So I can tell you this much: media are gonna love the fact that these fight cards are gonna end much sooner than say an HBO or an ESPN card. So I'm loving it. I think this is a great thing for boxing. We will see how PBC handles these first 4 months and what the network decides for the remainder of the year and 2020 and beyond. So now we move from this side of the world to Europe, into the UK. I think that everybody is already aware of Oleksandr Usyk, how great he is. He is not the undisputed cruiserweight world champion for nothing. He knocked out Tony Bellew in the 8th round to retain all of his world titles and essentially almost put a bow on his career at 200 pounds. He's been saying for a while that he wants the big fight against Anthony Joshua. He wants to move up to heavyweight. He wants to be a big star there. And with his banner year, and I'm telling you this right now, this is a bit of a spoiler. I'm telling you this right now. When the Fightful Boxing Awards come in at the end of the year, Oleksandr Usyk is gonna win the Fighter of the Year. That's not a prediction. That's a spoiler. I mean, there is no one boxer that has done more this year than Oleksandr Usyk, beating Mairis Briedis in his home country to unify 2 cruiserweight titles, beat Murad Gassiev in his home country to to become the undisputed champion, go to England, go to Tony Bellew's home country, knock him out and retain the titles. Oleksandr Usyk is such an incredible talent, and really now the question is, if he stays at cruiserweight for one more fight, let's say for a Denis Lebedev, for example, let's just say Denis Lebedev, and he fights him, and Oleksandr wins that fight, and just hypothetical quick here. It's really hard to not argue that Oleksandr Usyk is the greatest cruiserweight boxer of all time. Yes, better than Evander Holyfield, better than any other cruiserweight out there in history. Oleksandr Usyk, with what he's done and how little time he's done it. Remember, he's only 15 fights into his pro career. He won an Olympic gold medal. He won a world title as a pro almost immediately, just like that, after his pro debut. He became the undisputed champion this year, winning the first ever World Boxing Super Series, and then going to England to fight Tony Bellew and knock him out cold. It's really hard to look back and say there's any one cruiserweight that has done more than Oleksandr Usyk. You can make an argument. Oleksandr Usyk had the greatest year in cruiserweight history. You can make a very strong argument. I don't think there's anybody that will argue that point. So we shall see what his options are. There are a number of big fights at heavyweight that Oleksandr can have before getting to Anthony Joshua. He could fight a Derek Chisora or a Dillian White or a Carlos Takam or a Lucas Brown or a number of guys up there at heavyweight. And I think it's very important that Usyk won his fight against Bellew in the UK, because that is a market that is now quickly expanding in terms of reach in the US. A lot of people are really, really aware of Oleksandr Usyk and what he is capable of. A lot of people think he has a chance to beat Anthony Joshua. I don't know about that. That's a really tough fight for Oleksandr Usyk, by far the toughest of his career, I would argue. But Oleksandr Usyk is dead set on going to heavyweight. The problem he's going to be facing is that he is a tad small for today's generation of heavyweights. If this was 15, 20 years ago, I think Usyk would fit in just fine physically, but we are in an era where we have a 6'9" Tyson Fury, a 6'7" Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua, who is a skyscraper. Really, that's gonna be tough to beat that height disadvantage for Usyk. But if anyone's capable of doing so, that is definitely Oleksandr Usyk. He's that good. I suggest you watch his fights from this year, whether it be Murat Gassiev or Tony Bellew or Mairis Briedis. Really, Oleksandr Usyk is so good. He's gonna win Fight of the Year. I would argue unanimously across all boxing media. I don't think there's any one boxer that's done more this year than Oleksandr Usyk. And I am not alone in making that sentiment. So now we don't have a lot of time, because I do actually have a conference call with Deontay Wilder very, very soon, but do want to end things off on the latest on Floyd Mayweather to Rizin. Now, the boxing world, they thought they were very skeptical of Floyd Mayweather actually being in Rizin, actually fighting Tenshin Nasukawa. Would you look at our own Fightful's Showdown Joe Ferraro? He does color comment. He does play-by-play for Rizin. He didn't think this fight was going to happen. We all thought that this was a big joke, a big publicity stunt. Floyd Mayweather was going to get his money, and that's going to be the end of the day. And Rizin's going to get a lot of attention because of this debacle. Well, when I woke up this morning, I thought I was going to say, listen, this is Floyd Mayweather. He does what he does, and you know what? It's not going to happen. The boxing world never thought this was going to happen. People in the MMA world didn't think this was going to happen. That was until about 3 hours ago, when Floyd Mayweather Jr. was interviewed by TMZ, and he was saying that the fight against Tenshin Nasukawa might still be on. Just really quick, this is what he said, and you can read this on FightfulMMA.com. It's going to be a little boxing exhibition, no kicking at all. I'm moving around with the guy for 9 minutes, and of course, it's going to be the highest paid exhibition ever. Mayweather Promotions Rising, we're going to make it happen. It's a no-brainer. This is very weird. Now, here's the story. Now, Floyd Mayweather was announced a couple of weeks ago. He was fighting Tenshin Nasukawa at Rizin 14 at the end of the year, which is their New Year's Eve show. Then came a couple of days later, an Instagram post by Floyd Mayweather said that he never agreed to a fight with Nasukawa, that he was supposed to just do a simple exhibition in front of a few wealthy spectators, not on an official Rizin fight card, and that they never brought him out. They never told him it was going to be Nasukawa, was going to be an opponent of their choosing, but an opponent was never mentioned, according to Mayweather. But now Mayweather has come out and said, we're going to do this. We're doing this. Now, I don't know if it's still going to happen at Rizin 14. Rizin was still advertising the fight. Strangely enough, they were advertising the fight even after the fact. But when it comes to Floyd Mayweather, if you have enough money, he's willing to do just about anything. And that key quote that I said is going to be the highest paid exhibition ever. Really, what happened, what I would argue, or what I would theorize, is there was a lot, something got lost in translation. Floyd Mayweather did agree to something, to a fight. He at the very least agreed to participate in the press conference, which he said he got paid 7 figures just for talking about Rizin. But I think something got lost in translation. I don't know if Mayweather, the proper channels got to Mayweather regarding the Tenshin Nasukawa fight and the location and the audience that is going to watch this fight. But now we don't know. All I can say is I have no idea if it's going to happen. But with Floyd Mayweather, I've learned that you can never really take anything he says at face value. And I think Showdown Joe and our own Sean Ross Sapp, who has a big pulse on the MMA scene and in boxing in some regards, I think they would also agree that it's hard to really take what Mayweather has been saying for a while at face value. And boxing in general is very skeptical of this whole thing happening. I would go ahead and say boxing is still skeptical that he would actually fight Tenshin Nasukawa, even if it was a simple 9-minute exhibition bout with no kicking allowed. I would still argue, I think that boxing is still not believing this is going to happen. So we'll see. I don't know what's going to happen with Floyd Mayweather, but when we do have an update, if there is an official announcement of this fight actually happening, Fightful will give you all the details about it. Visit Fightful.com, FightfulMMA.com, Fightful Wrestling, Fightful Boxing. Carlos Toro, lead boxer of FightfulBoxing.com, signing out.